The wind howled across the frozen plains, carrying with it the scent of pine and the sharp bite of winter. Snow fell relentlessly, draping the rugged landscape in a thick, white blanket. Every step was a struggle, every breath a puff of smoke in the frigid air. In the distance, a solitary figure trudged through the snow, her skirts dragging, her bonnet tied tight against the biting wind. She was far from the warmth and comfort of any town, far from the familiar sights of hearth and home. She was a stranger here, in this wild, untamed country. Her name was Clara, though the letters on her travel papers spelled it differently. And in the world she had come from, she had been someone else entirely. Now, she was a mail-order bride, her fate tied to a man she had never met, a man who lived on the edge of the world, where the wind spoke louder than any voice and the mountains cut the sky like jagged teeth. She had no choice but to keep moving, each step a defiance against the bitter cold, each moment a testament to her courage. She had arrived at the small, weather-beaten cabin in the midst of a snowstorm. Smoke curled from the chimney, twisting and coiling into the gray sky, a promise of warmth and shelter. As she approached, she could make out the outline of a man on the porch, leaning against the wooden railing. His coat was heavy, dusted with snow, and his hat shadowed his face. He did not move as she drew near, his posture calm, almost lazy, yet there was a strength about him, a quiet assurance that could only come from years surviving in a land that demanded toughness. When she was close enough, he looked up, and she saw his eyes, a piercing shade of blue, like the winter sky before a storm breaks. He tipped his hat slightly, and his voice carried softly across the snow, steady and measured. "I've been waiting out here," he said, and there was no judgment in it, only a simple acknowledgement of her arrival, as if he had known all along she would come. Clara swallowed hard, her lips dry and trembling. The journey had been long, and the fear of what awaited had kept her awake for nights that felt endless. But in that moment, facing the man who was supposed to be her future, something in her shifted. There was no pretense here, no illusions. The raw honesty of the frontier lay in every line of his face, every set of his shoulders. It was intimidating, yes, but it was real. And in this world, real was better than anything else. He stepped down from the porch, boots crunching in the snow, and held out a gloved hand. "Come on inside. You're frozen through." His drawl was soft, almost musical, a rhythm she found herself unconsciously following. She took his hand, and he helped her across the threshold of the cabin. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave, and she shivered despite the heavy layers she wore. The cabin was simple but sturdy, made of thick logs that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. A fire roared in the stone hearth, sending dancing shadows across the room. The man moved with practiced ease, tossing another log onto the fire, then turning to her with a small smile. "I'm Luke," he said, finally offering his name. "Luke Dawson." "Clara," she replied softly, unsure if her voice would carry the courage she felt she lacked. He nodded once, then gestured to a chair near the fire. "Sit. Warm up. You've got a long road behind you." Clara sank into the chair, letting the heat seep into her bones. She had imagined this moment countless times, wondered what he would be like, if he would be kind or harsh, welcoming or distant. She had braced herself for disappointment, for rejection, for any number of outcomes. And yet here he was, not the man from her dreams, not the villain of her nightmares, but a man who simply existed, steady and unshakable. Luke sat across from her, eyes never leaving her face, studying her as if trying to understand her story without needing words. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was a rare kind of peace, the sort that could only be found in the wilderness where life demanded both caution and patience. After a long moment, he spoke again, his voice low, deliberate. "It ain't easy, living out here. The land'll test you, make you question every choice. But you've come this far. That says something about you." Clara looked at him, unsure whether to trust the sincerity in his words. I didn't know if I could make it," she admitted. "The storm, the cold. I thought I might turn back." Luke shrugged, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ain't nobody stronger than the land itself. You survive it, you survive everything. And you got guts to come out here on your own, all the way through a blizzard." Her chest tightened. The honesty in his voice struck her deeper than she expected. There were no flattery, no easy words to soothe her. Only recognition, acknowledgement that the world was harsh, but she had faced it anyway. They spoke long into the night, trading stories of the past, her memories of a city life, cramped and predictable, and his tales of frontier survival, where each day was earned with sweat and calloused hands. The more she learned, the more the pieces of this life began to fit together in her mind. She realized that this wasn't about a romanticized notion of marriage. This was about two people forging a connection in a place where trust was scarce, and every day was a battle for survival. Days passed, and Clara settled into the rhythm of life on the edge of the frontier. Luke showed her the ways of the land, how to start a fire in the snow, how to track game, and how to treat wounds when help was miles away. She learned the importance of patience, the quiet strength and resilience, and the subtle art of reading the sky for signs of weather. Despite the hardships, there were moments of simple joy. The two of them would sit by the fire at night, sharing stories or playing cards with hands stiff from the cold. Sometimes, Luke would hum a low, rough tune, and Clara would find herself smiling despite herself. The trust between them grew, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through the shared reality of surviving the wilderness together. One evening, a few weeks after she had arrived, a sudden blizzard struck, fiercer than any before. The wind tore at the cabin walls, snow piled against the door like a living thing. Clara panicked, fear clawing at her throat, but Luke's calm presence kept her steady. "Clara," he said, taking her hands in his, "look at me. We've faced worse than this. We'll get through it together." His certainty was contagious. She nodded, letting his strength bolster her own. Together, they reinforced the cabin, stoked the fire, and rode out the storm. When dawn broke, the world outside was a pristine white, sparkling under the sun. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered, a reminder of the power of nature and the endurance of those who live within it. It was then that Clara understood the depth of what had brought her here. She had arrived expecting a stranger, someone she would have to learn to tolerate or endure. Instead, she had found a man who commanded respect not through fear, but through quiet strength. She had found a home not built of walls alone, but of trust, resilience, and the shared understanding that life on the frontier was unforgiving, but beautiful in its honesty. Luke watched her from across the cabin, noticing the way her eyes lingered on the snow outside, the way she breathed deeply as if the world itself had become a part of her. He tipped his hat in a small, knowing gesture. "Looks like you're settling in just fine." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth deeper than the fire, a sense of belonging she hadn't known she craved. She nodded, her voice steady. "I think I am." And in that moment, the snowstorm outside seemed to bow in respect to the lives forged within the cabin. Two strangers had arrived at a place unknown, carrying nothing but courage and hope. They had found each other, not through chance alone, but through the shared trials of the land, the quiet acts of bravery, and the understanding that sometimes the most enduring bonds are built not on words, but on the unspoken promise to face whatever comes, together. So if you've enjoyed this journey into the rugged, untamed West, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There are countless more stories of courage, resilience, and unexpected connections waiting for you, each one carrying the spirit of the frontier, the raw honesty of life on the edge, and the thrill of adventure. You'll meet cowboys and pioneers, face storms and hardships, and discover the kind of strength that only comes from daring to step into the unknown. Subscribe, and let the stories of the Old West guide you through snowy plains, dusty trails, and the hearts of those brave enough to call it home. Because in a world where the wind can cut sharper than any blade, and the night can seem endless, the greatest warmth comes not from fire alone, but from the people we choose to share it with.